The guards at the forward depot heard the engine first, a low wooden hum. It did not sound like a bomber. It did not sound like anything dangerous. One officer said it sounded like a tractor. Another said it sounded like a field cart with a bad belt. No one went for cover. No one raised an alarm. They looked up and saw a slow biplane with canvas wings and a narrow fuselage. They called it a crop duster. The aircraft flew at 1,500 feet. Its speed held at 84 miles per hour. The German spotters laughed. Their flak gun crews stayed seated. They watched it drift in the dark like a toy. Then the bombs fell. 6 2.2-pound charges. They hit the fuel crates stacked beside the trucks. The crates erupted. The air flashed white. The blast wave hit the courtyard. A supply line that fed 2 battalions burned in less than 13 seconds. The pilots who dropped those bombs did not carry parachutes. Their planes could not lift them. They carried no radios, no armor, no firing guns. The cockpit walls were plywood 8 millimeters thick. The women who flew them carried compasses, rulers, and a map belt clipped to their thighs. That was all they needed. Their commanders had mocked them first. They said women could not fly night missions. They said women could not manage stall speeds of 37 miles per hour without breaking their necks. They said the U-2 biplane was too light to survive combat operations. The U-2 weighed 771 pounds empty. It was a teaching aircraft. A trainer. They sent these women to the front because they had no other aircraft to spare. The women did not argue. They asked for welding torches. They reinforced their wing struts. They stripped weight from the cockpit. They removed radios. They sanded varnish off the floorboards. They shaved off 22 pounds. That was enough to carry 2 extra bombs. The men at headquarters called them Little Witches. The name spread across tents. The joke held until the first German column reported an attack they could not explain. They said the planes came in pairs. They cut their engines at 1,000 meters. They glided like falling leaves. They made no sound except a faint whisper of air over wires. The Germans said it sounded like broomsticks cutting the wind. The broomstick sound became a signal. Soldiers ran for cover when they heard it. They knew the bombs dropped at exactly 300 meters. The pilots counted the fall time at 4 seconds. They watched for the flash. Then they turned and climbed at low throttle. They moved slow enough to feel bullets passing through the fabric. The Germans studied the damage reports. They saw bridges collapsed. They saw fuel trucks burning. They saw ammunition dumps gutted by tiny bomb craters. They thought the Soviet army had deployed a new stealth aircraft. They did not understand these planes were built of wood, linen, and wire, materials used for training teenagers. The women trained at Engels Air Force School. They learned in 12 weeks what standard pilots learned in 18 months. They flew 5 hours a night. They practiced engine cuts. They practiced emergency landings in open fields. They learned to read terrain by moonlight. Their instructors tracked their nerves with stopwatches. A hesitation of 2 seconds disqualified a candidate. They slept in barracks with cracked windows. Their flight suits tore easily. They patched them with wire and wax. Their gloves had holes. Their boots soaked through with frost. One pilot said her skin froze to her seat during a February mission. She peeled herself free with a knife handle. Their aircraft, officially the Polikarpov U-2, later Po-2, had a 125-horsepower Shvetsov M11 engine. The M11 ran on 72-octane fuel. It burned 6.6 gallons per hour. At full throttle, the engine shook the stick. At low throttle, it hummed like a sewing machine. Its simplicity made it reliable. A damaged cylinder could be replaced in 12 minutes. The Po-2's frame was wood. The covering was linen soaked in dope. A 9mm round passed straight through without exploding. Flak shells often detonated behind the plane. The pilots said their aircraft were too slow to hit. German pilots said they were too slow to intercept. A BN-09 stalled at their turning speed. The women used that fact. They made tight circles over targets. They dropped flares. They blinded the supply crews below. They scored hits with bombs that weighed less than a loaf of bread. The Germans added more spotlights to counter them. The spotlights helped the witches find the targets faster. Their squadron was the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, a unit created by Marina Reskova, the Soviet pilot known for her record-setting long-distance flights. She convinced the high command that women could serve as combat aviators. They approved her request, but offered the worst aircraft and the oldest bombs. The bombs were leftover munitions from the 1920s. Some had cracked casings. Some had unreliable fuses. The women tested them in a chalk pit. They measured fuse delay times with pocket watches. They recorded variation down to tenths of a second. They adjusted their drop angles accordingly. Their missions required 2 planes. One plane flew low with the engine on to distract the gunners. The second plane cut the engine and descended silently. The silent plane dropped the bombs. The distraction plane banked away. They switched roles on the next pass. The technique produced stress on wing joints. They reinforced those joints with steel plates taken from scrap. The German soldiers in the field gave them a name: Nachthexen, night witches. The Luftwaffe distributed warnings. They instructed pilots not to engage Po-2s below 300 meters. The turning radius was too tight, the stall speed too low. Chasing them meant crashing. One night south of the Don River, 3 German trucks were lined up for fuel resupply. The witches spotted them from 2,000 meters. They flew 2 miles upwind. They turned with the breeze at their backs. Engine cut. Glide angle fixed. One pilot counted 10 seconds before the drop. She released 2 bombs. The trucks ignited. Each truck carried 40 gallons of fuel. The fireball lit the sky. The German commander at that depot filed a complaint. He said his anti-aircraft crews refused to fire. They said the witches were too quiet to track. They said the bombs dropped before the crews realized the planes were overhead. The commander ordered more listening devices. The devices picked up wind. They did not pick up Po-2s. The witches flew 8 to 12 missions per night. They carried 3 bombs per sortie. The total weight per load was 150 pounds. The pilots memorized the exact feel of that weight in the lift. They adjusted the trim manually. They used seat pressure to read banking angles in the dark. During one mission near Novorossiysk, a pilot named Nadia opened her bomb bay and found 1 fuse half-armed. She held the bomb in her lap. She reset the safety pin with her teeth. The plane shook in turbulence. She held the bomb steady with her knees. She completed the drop. Their airfields were rough strips carved from dirt. Each had 1 lantern at the end. They landed with engines nearly stalled. They touched down at 37 miles per hour. One mistake meant snapping a strut. They carried spare struts in the mess tent. The witches navigated without radio beacons. They followed rivers, roads, the dark line of a forest. They memorized angles between landmarks. They used stopwatches to track distance. They trusted dead reckoning. Fog erased their work. Snow distorted perspective. They flew anyway. Their missions increased. By the winter of 1943, German officers estimated that each regiment of their infantry lost 3 supply trucks per week to night witch bombing. The officers requested heavier flak guns. The heavier guns could not track planes that slow. The Germans tried search grids. They drew circles on maps. They set ambushes at predicted altitudes. The witches flew outside the circle. They did not follow predicted altitudes. They drifted on wind currents. They trusted feel more than planning. One Luftwaffe pilot wrote that engaging a Po-2 was like chasing a shadow with a razor. His Bf 1110 overshot the witches on every pass. He tried climbing and descending to match their speed. His wings vibrated near stall. He withdrew from pursuit. The witches carried pencils tied with string. They marked their altitudes on the cockpit frame when they felt ice forming. Ice added weight. Weight changed stall behavior. They compensated by keeping the nose 2 degrees lower. Small adjustments saved crashes. Their bombs were dropped by hand. They pulled a cord. The cord released a clamp. The clamp let the bomb fall free. Each release handle was a metal ring. The ring cut into their palms. They wrapped rags around their hands to prevent cuts. The rags froze during winter flights. Their success grew. Senior officers said it was luck. They said it was coincidence. They said supply lines were fragile. They said women simply happened to hit the right spots. The witches did not argue. They prepared for the next sortie. One mechanic weighed every bomb. She rejected any bomb 30 grams heavier than standard. The difference altered drop trajectory at low height. She calibrated each load. She tracked results. Her adjustments increased accuracy by 8%. No one in command noticed. The witches noticed. She pushed the throttle forward until the lever met the metal stop. The M11 engine shook hard. The vibration went through her knees. The plane crawled through the night air. She gained 6 meters, then 8, then 10. She aimed for the black line of the forest. Below it, the railway glimmered under moonlight like a thin blade. The crew chief watched from the ground. He held his breath. He knew the wind data. He knew the plane's safe climb rate. The numbers did not line up. She climbed anyway. He counted seconds. He stopped at 18. The plane cleared the tree line by less than 2 meters. She lowered the nose. The plane became a shadow sliding across the top of the pines. She could see sparks in the darkness below. German trucks. 2 of them. They moved without lights. Their engines made a dull hum. She banked left. The wing dipped. It almost brushed the needles. Nadia tapped the flare pistol twice. It was their signal. Drop altitude. Commit. No corrections after the dive begins. Yelena pulled the chocks off the release board. Her fingers shook once. She forced them still. She checked the fuses again. 6 bomblets. RDX mix. 2.8 kilograms each. The plane dipped. The airframe groaned. The wing spar flexed. She could not see the target clearly. She relied on the smell. German fuel had a different burn profile from Soviet fuel. Thicker. Sweet. She followed it. The trucks moved into a clearing. One halted. She saw the canvas top. She saw movement beneath it. Crates. Long and square. Those were rifle crates. The second truck slowed. She saw tin barrels. Those were oil drums. She made the decision. She angled the plane to the right. She cut throttle to idle. The wind took hold. The noise dropped to almost nothing. The Po-2 was silent when gliding. That was its only advantage. The Germans never heard it until it was too late. She waited for the right moment. Yelena leaned out. She felt cold air slam her cheeks. She lined up the drop board with the canvas roof of the first truck. She counted the seconds. She felt the plane settle. She pushed the release lever. The first cluster fell. 6 dark shapes. They spun once, then again. They disappeared into the trees. She lifted her head. She braced. The concussions rose like dull punches, not sharp, not loud. 6 thuds. Then one heavy blast as the oil drums ignited. The flame jumped 10 meters into the air. She pulled the stick. The plane climbed rough and slow. She heard gunfire behind them. German rifles. 7 of them. Maybe more. The bullets cracked past the tail spar. One hit the lower wing fabric. A tear opened. It flapped in the slipstream. She kept climbing. Yelena reloaded the flare pistol. She did it without being told. She knew they had 2 more passes. The trucks were gone, but the railway line still stood. The Germans relied on it. Without it, their push toward the Caucasus stalled. She wiped dust from her goggles. The sky stayed clear. No clouds, no cover. The moon lit everything. She hated moonlight. It made them visible. But the operation depended on it. They needed to see the tracks. She angled the plane toward the north bend of the line. She saw the embankment. She saw the wooden planks and the steel rails. She cut throttle again. The engine coughed once, then quiet. The plane drifted. She pointed the nose down slightly. She felt adrenaline in her throat. She did not swallow. The machine gun team below moved. She saw 3 helmets. They turned their heads. Someone pointed up. They fired. Short bursts. Not accurate. They were too nervous. Tracers flew below the fuselage and disappeared into the dark. Yelena held the second set of bomblets. These were fuse delayed. Not instant. They would detonate under the track after settling. She waited for the signal. Nadia raised her left hand. Yelena leaned out again. She dropped the second set. They fell in a straight line. 1 landed on the embankment. 3 hit the gravel. 2 landed directly between the rails. She forced herself not to look away. She had seen misfires before. She hoped these would not. The plane cleared the line. She pushed throttle. The engine woke. It sputtered for a moment, then caught. She felt relief, but did not show it. She banked right to prepare for the 3rd run. Below them, the delayed fuses started their sequence. 1 after another. 6 bangs, each deeper than the last. She heard the rails buckle. She saw sparks. A section of the line folded inward like a broken spine. Another burst of rifle fire. She felt a jolt. A round hit the left strut. She checked the gauge. Oil pressure stable. Fuel flow normal. She kept flying. Yelena pressed her hand against the frame. The vibration traveled through her bones. She turned the plane back toward the smoke. There was one last objective. A small depot hut. Wooden. 2 windows. Inside it, the Germans stored their signal equipment. Without it, they could not coordinate repairs. She lowered the nose. The hut was barely visible, just a square shadow. But she saw the lantern glow through the cracks. Someone was inside. At least 2 men. She cut throttle 1 more time. She let the glide take over. Yelena prepared the last munitions. 2 cylindrical charges. Larger, neutralizing powder cores. They were designed to spread shrapnel sideways, not down. Perfect for structures. She held them tight. She listened to the wind. The plane dropped to 10 meters, then 7, then 5. She felt the branches scrape the landing gear. She ignored the noise. She kept the nose steady. She banked just enough to level her approach. Yelena waited. The hut grew larger. She released the charges. They tumbled fast. They hit the roof with 2 flat thuds. 2 seconds later, the hut exploded outward. The lantern burst. The walls split. The roof caved inward. She throttled up. The engine coughed again. She pushed harder. She felt the plane struggle. The smoke from the depot rose in a column. It hit them. The engine sputtered. She leveled out. She fought the controls until the sputter smoothed. Rifle fire continued, but it was weaker now. Disorganized. The Germans were running. She saw their shadows scatter in the trees. The depot was gone. The trucks were burning. The rail line was torn open. Their job was done. The plane flew low over the ridge. The forest swallowed them again. She held the stick steady. She did not speak. Yelena sat back. She checked the empty release board. She exhaled once. No emotion. Just air leaving lungs. The crew chief watched from the field as the plane approached. He saw the torn fabric. He saw the dark streaks on the fuselage. He counted the damage. The wings sagged slightly. They land anyway. He stepped back. She touched the wheels down at the far edge of the strip. The grass caught them. The plane shook. She braked once. The Po-2 rolled to a slow halt. The engine clicked as it cooled. She shut it down. She removed her goggles. She stepped out. Her boots hit the soil. She did not smile. She walked toward the crew hut. Behind her, the crew chief inspected the plane. He counted 8 bullet holes, 1 near the fuel tank, 6 near the tail, 1 in the strut. He touched the torn wing. The fabric peeled. He wrote the damage numbers on his clipboard. He circled 2 of them. Structural concerns. He walked to her. He held the clipboard. She read the numbers. She nodded once. They would fly again the next night. She knew the line would not be rebuilt by then. She sat on the bench inside the crew hut. She removed her gloves. Her hands were stiff from the cold. She rubbed them once. The crew chief placed a tin cup on the table. Hot water. Not tea. They had run out 3 nights earlier. She drank anyway. The operations officer entered without knocking. He carried a clipboard with a red stripe. Red meant casualty reports or mission deviations. She looked at the stripe. He placed it on the table. The page had 3 lines, all blank. That meant no losses. She nodded again. He handed her the reconnaissance sketch. It showed the rail zone they had just attacked. A rough pencil outline. Cross-hatching for fire damage. Circles for crater points. He pointed to one section. The rails there had twisted into an S shape. That meant repair would take at least 9 hours. She pointed at the large crater drawn near the embankment. She knew the one that had folded the line. She tapped it once. She wanted confirmation. The officer nodded. Patrols reported the track completely severed. No train could pass without derailing. Yelena cleaned the flare pistol in silence. She removed the spent casings. She placed them in a cloth pouch. The pouches were stacked in a wooden crate. Each pouch held 12 casings. They reused what they could. They had to. Outside, the engine crew began work on the Po-2. They spread a tarp under the fuselage. The mechanic crawled beneath it. He tapped the lower longeron with a wooden mallet. The sound told him everything. Hollow meant intact. Dull meant compromised. He heard one dull note. He marked the spot. She stepped outside. She crouched beside him. He pointed at the damaged section. She traced the crack with her finger. The fabric edge brushed her knuckle. She stood again. She asked one question. Could it fly? The mechanic answered with one word. Yes. The fuel officer approached with his ledger. He logged the numbers. Full tank at takeoff, 105 kilograms. Fuel consumed, 87. Remaining, 18. She checked the figures. The margin was narrow. Too narrow. She nodded anyway. The commander of the regiment arrived. She wore a wool coat. She inspected the bullet holes. She squinted at the strut damage. She asked how close they had flown to the ground. Nadia gave the exact altitude. 5 meters. She added the distance to the hut. 12 meters. The commander wrote it down. The commander asked why they had made a third pass when 2 were authorized. Nadia answered plainly. The signal hut controlled repair protocol. Without destroying it, the Germans would mobilize too quickly. The commander accepted the reasoning. She did not praise. She did not criticize. A runner sprinted from the communications tent. He carried a single sheet of paper. He handed it to the commander. She read it. She turned to Nadia. A German supply train had been scheduled to pass the destroyed section at dawn. It would not. The disruption would shift the entire sector's logistics. The commander folded the paper. She placed it inside her coat. She walked away. She did not look back. The operations officer followed her. His boots left straight lines in the dirt. Nadia removed her flight cap. Her hair stuck to her forehead. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket. Yelena handed her a ration tin. 1 biscuit, 1 square of sugar. She shared half the biscuit with her. They ate in silence. The mechanic called to her. He wanted her attention. He pointed at the crack again. He explained the repair. He would stitch the fabric with waxed cord. He would reinforce the spar with a metal brace scavenged from a grounded aircraft. It would hold for 1 more mission. Maybe 2. She knew what maybe meant. It meant 1 mistake, 1 wind shear, 1 burst of gunfire. She accepted it. They had no spare aircraft. They had no spare parts. They had only what they could fly. The sky outside began to fade. The first hint of morning showed a pale edge over the tree line. Birds began to call. She hated flying after sunrise. The Po-2 was too slow. Daylight made it an easy target for fighters. She checked the mission window. They were done until night. She walked back into the hut. She unrolled her map. She studied the line they had attacked. She traced the path of the trucks, the supply depot, the signal hut. She circled the impact zones. She calculated distances. She marked potential flak positions based on the rifle fire patterns. Yelena leaned over the map. She pointed at 2 spots. Those were likely machine gun nests. The spread of the tracers indicated MG-34s. Fast cycle rate. Distinct signature. They would be reinforced by nightfall. She made a note. The reconnaissance team entered the hut. They carried a camera box. They placed it on the table. They removed the film container. They handed it to her. She inspected the casing. Minor dents. No cracks. That meant the pictures survived the flight vibration. She passed the container to the darkroom operator. He took it without speaking. He walked back to the development tent. The prints would take 30 minutes. She waited. The mechanic stepped inside. He wiped grease from his hands. He gave an update. The wing tear was stitched. The strut was braced. The engine cowling had been removed. They found no internal damage. The Po-2 would be airworthy by sundown. She walked outside again. She looked at the plane. The stitches along the wing formed a crooked line. The new metal brace shone in the dawn light. She placed her hand on the nose of the aircraft. The metal felt cold. She left her hand there for a moment. A truck rolled into the field. It carried ammunition crates. The quartermaster climbed down. He opened the back. Inside were 6 wooden boxes. He pried one open. Inside were 2 stacks of bomblets. 12 per crate. The fuses were wrapped in paper. She inspected a fuse. She checked the threading. She checked the weight. She checked the locking tab. She placed it back in the crate. The quartermaster closed the lid. He marked the inventory. The darkroom operator returned with the photos. He handed her 10 prints. She spread them on the table. The rail line showed clear structural distortion. The explosion pattern matched their drop path. The hut appeared as a collapsed mass of timber. She studied each image until she memorized the angles. The reconnaissance officer stepped forward. He highlighted one detail. A German patrol had moved into the zone 30 minutes after the attack. Their tracks showed confusion. No organized response. That meant the signal disruption succeeded. She folded the photos. She placed them in a canvas folder. She tied the string around it. She logged the results in the mission ledger. Date. Aircraft number. Damage incurred. Ordnance dropped. Structural impact on enemy logistics. The commander returned. She held a sealed envelope. She handed it to Nadia. It contained the next assignment. A new target. A fuel storage site near a marsh. Heavily guarded. Low approach required. Maximum glide. High risk of ground fire. The commander said one sentence. Nightfall. Be ready. Nadia closed the envelope. She placed it in her jacket. She stepped outside. She looked at the sky. She knew the next night would be harder. The Germans would expect retaliation. They would triple their patrols. They would fortify the approaches. They would listen for engines. She walked back to the Po-2. She touched the stitched wing again. She moved her hand along the brace. She inspected the rudder fabric. She checked the wheel chocks. She crouched to view the lower fuselage. She counted the patches. She counted the holes. Yelena stood beside her. She held the flare pistol. She asked one question. Same plane? Nadia answered yes. Same plane, same route, same silence. Nothing changed except the danger. The sun rose behind the forest. The shadows stretched long across the field. The ground crew dispersed. The operations officer updated the board. The commanders entered their tents. The mechanic finished the last stitch. The field grew quiet. She sat on the wing. She stared at the tree line. She replayed the mission in her mind. Every descent, every drop, every rifle burst. She noted the errors. She noted the risks. She noted the luck. She removed luck from the evaluation. Only decisions mattered. The next night would push the Po-2 past its limits. She knew the M11 engine could overheat if forced to climb too quickly. She knew the wing fabric could tear under high stress. She knew the glide path over the marsh would require precision measured in centimeters. She stood. She stepped off the wing. She walked to the hut. She closed the door behind her. She sat at the table. She opened the envelope. She studied the target sketch for the next mission. Fuel tanks, storage sheds, marsh reeds, narrow approaches. She memorized every line. She folded the map. She placed it on the bench. She closed her eyes. She slowed her breathing. She counted each sound of each breath. She cleared the noise from her mind. She prepared for the next flight. The field stayed quiet through the morning. Nadia rested for 30 minutes. She woke without an alarm. Her body knew the rhythm. She sat up. She tightened her boots. She rolled her shoulders to loosen the stiffness. She walked toward the operations hut. The commander waited inside. She stood over the map table. She pointed at the marsh zone. The contour lines were faint. The elevation was nearly flat. Good for gliding. Bad for escape. The commander traced the expected German patrol route. 2 trucks, 1 motorcycle, 1 dog unit. They rotated every 40 minutes. Nadia studied the lines. She tapped one section, a blind spot created by a cluster of trees. She calculated the angle. She measured the gap. She concluded they could slip through if they dropped altitude early. The commander nodded. She wrote the plan. Yelena entered. She carried a flask of hot water. She placed it on the table. She waited while Nadia reviewed the final notes. The mission would require maximum silence. Long glide path. Minimal fuel burn. Strict timing. No margin for error. The mechanic stepped in. He reported the engine test. The M11 fired properly. The cylinders reached operating temperature in 6 minutes. Compression was stable. No irregular rattling. He warned them about the strut brace. It could handle normal stress. It would not tolerate sudden turbulence. Nadia accepted it silently. She asked only about the stitches. The mechanic said they were tight. Waxed cord held firm. He double-knotted each point. He reinforced the seam with doped fabric. He said it would last through the night. She believed him. The quartermaster issued new bomblets, 12 units, each weighed 2.2 pounds, 5-second fuses, impact shells. She inspected each one. She checked the threads. She checked the pins. She checked the locking rings. Everything matched regulation. The operations officer gave them the timing. They would depart at moonrise, 70 minutes after sunset. The moon would be a narrow crescent, enough light to see the horizon, not enough for German spotlights to catch movement. It was the optimal window. Nadia left the hut. She walked toward the edge of the forest. She needed quiet. The ground beneath her boots crunched with frost. She looked at the sky. Thin clouds drifted across the upper air. Stable, predictable. No signs of crosswind. She returned to the field. The crew had set the Po-2 on chocks. The mechanic tested the tail wheel. He spun it. Smooth rotation. No binding. He checked the tires. Pressure slightly low. Acceptable for soft landings. He logged the numbers on his board. Yelena sat on a crate. She cleaned the flare pistol again. She wiped the barrel with an oilcloth. She checked the spring. She checked the hinge. She placed it back into its holster. She waited without speaking. She always waited in silence. Nadia inspected the control cables. She pulled each one by hand. She listened for fraying. She felt the tension. Rudder cable tight. Elevator cable slightly loose. She adjusted it half a turn. She rechecked the play. It was correct. The ground crew fueled the plane. They loaded 50 kilograms. Minimal load. Enough for takeoff, climb, glide, escape. The operations officer double-checked the figures. A single miscalculation could stall the aircraft in the marsh. They measured twice. The moon began its slow rise above the tree line. A thin arc. Pale. Cold. Yelena stood. She put on her gloves. She tightened the wrist straps. Nadia did the same. They walked to the aircraft. The field crew stepped back. Nadia climbed into the cockpit first. She checked the gauges. Oil pressure, fuel level, cylinder temperature, altimeter, compass. Each needle sat where it should. She clenched the yoke once. It felt firm. No drift, no slack. Yelena climbed into the rear seat. She secured the bomblets. She fastened the canvas straps. She checked each fuse a final time. She gave a single tap on the side of the fuselage. Nadia acknowledged with a raised hand. The mechanic rotated the propeller by hand. The blades cut the cold air. He stepped back. He called for ignition. Nadia pressed the switch. The engine coughed once, then again. The third rotation caught. The cylinders fired. The M11 came alive. Low rumble, even rhythm. The plane rolled forward. Light. slow, almost delicate. The tail wheel lifted as the speed increased. The runway was only a strip of packed dirt, uneven, narrow. She kept the yoke steady. She felt the wheels leave the ground. The aircraft rose. The engine warmed quickly. She monitored the gauge. Stable. She pointed the nose east. The sky darkened behind them. The ground became a blend of black shapes and thin shadows. She climbed to 400 meters. She cut the throttle. The glide began. Airflow brushed the fabric wings with a soft whisper. No engine sound. No vibration. Just the faint creak of wood spars. They became invisible. Only the moon saw them. She checked her heading. She made a slight correction. Yelena tapped the bulkhead twice. She saw movement below. German truck convoy. 3 vehicles. They moved slowly. They carried no spotlights. They listened for engines. Nadia held her breath. The aircraft passed over them. Silent. Unseen. The trucks continued without change. She waited until they were a kilometer behind. She exhaled once. Quietly. They approached the marsh zone. The ground grew darker. The water absorbed light. The reeds stood in long vertical lines. She lowered the nose. The glide became steeper. Airspeed increased. She kept her hand steady. Ahead, she saw the fuel storage site. 3 large tanks, 2 sheds, a generator hut, 1 guard tower, a patrol with rifles, 1 lantern hung from a post. She calculated drop paths. She lined up the angle. Yelena prepared the bomblets. She removed the first safety pin. She held it close. She leaned out slightly. She watched for the marker point, a dead tree stump at the marsh edge. That was the release cue. The stump passed below. Yelena dropped the first ordnance. The shell fell in silence. 5-second fuse. Nadia counted in her head. 1, 2, 3, 4. The explosion lit the reeds. The shockwave shook the huts. The guards shouted. Rifles pointed into darkness. They searched for wings, for engines, for shadows. They found nothing. The Po-2 had moved 10 meters to the left, too slow for calculation, too quiet for detection. Yelena dropped the second bomblet, then the third. Fuel sprayed upward in a white plume. Fire followed. Tanks ruptured. Pressure forced metal outward. The night glowed orange. The marsh reflected it like molten glass. The guard tower swung its spotlight. The beam cut across the air. It passed under them. It passed above them. It never touched them. Nadia banked slightly. Enough to evade. Not enough to lose glide efficiency. Yelena prepared the final drop. 4 bomblets fused together in a cluster pattern. She removed the pins. She waited. She chose the angle. She released. The cluster hit the generator shed. Flames tore the roof apart. Yeah. The engine coughed back to life. Nadia pushed the throttle forward. The M11 responded with a steady hum. She felt the vibration in her knees. She climbed at a gentle angle. 5 degrees. No sudden moves. The Po-2 remained steady. The wings flexed slightly under the lift. Smoke rose from the burning tanks. Flames licked the marsh reeds. The huts were alight. Sparks flew into the night sky. Nadia adjusted her trim. The aircraft banked slightly to compensate for wind. Each degree mattered. 1 miscalculation, and they could hit the water. Yelena reloaded the flare pistol. She checked the spring. No cracks. No dirt. She placed it in the holster. Her hands were steady. No hesitation. The wind hit the fuselage. It rattled the rivets. The plane remained intact. They flew low over the marsh. The reeds brushed beneath the wing struts. She counted rotations. She measured airspeed. 37 miles per hour. Correct. Stall speed. Any slower, they would drop into the water. The trucks below had stopped. Soldiers poured out. Rifles aimed skyward. They fired in bursts. The tracers traced arcs in the night. None reached the aircraft. The Po-2's speed and altitude made it untouchable. Nadia adjusted the glide path. She leveled the plane over a narrow channel. Water reflected moonlight. Smooth surface. She watched the ripples. She estimated height. 2 meters. Barely above the reeds. Yelena readied the last bomblets. They were heavier. 3 kilograms each. Impact sensitive. She held them with both hands. She waited for the right moment. Timing was critical. The first cluster dropped, hit the tanks. Explosions flared. Debris flew. Sparks ignited dry grass. The fire spread. Flames reflected on the water. Nadia banked left. Slight tilt. She adjusted rudder. Aircraft remained stable. The second cluster followed. She measured the release perfectly. 1 bomb hit the shed roof. 2 others fell among storage barrels. Sparks and fire erupted. Smoke engulfed the area. Visibility for the enemy dropped. Rifle fire increased. Soldiers scrambled. They aimed at shadows. They fired wildly. Tracers cut the night. None hit the aircraft. Nadia felt the wind. She compensated. 2 degrees of nose up. Engine steady. Altimeter steady. They prepared for the escape glide. The marsh stretched below. Trees formed a natural corridor. She banked slightly right. She adjusted the ailerons. The fabric wings creaked. The spars flexed. She ignored the noise. The generator hut exploded. Flames shot upward. The guard tower's lantern shattered. Soldiers yelled. Confusion spread. The patrol retreated. They did not know where the aircraft had come from. They could not track the Po-2. Yelena reloaded the remaining bomblets. She handled them carefully. The metal shells were cold. She checked the fuses, locking pins intact, weight measured, drop trajectory, calculated. Perfect. They approached the final section of the target zone. Fuel barrels lined the edge. Soldiers stationed there. Machine gun nest. Nadia lowered the nose. Glide speed increased. 39 miles per hour. Correct. Yelena released the bomblets. They struck the barrels. Fires erupted. Pressure waves shattered nearby windows. Smoke and flames rose. Sparks landed on the marsh. Nadia banked left. The plane tilted slightly. Rudder adjusted. A single MG-34 opened fire. Tracers traced a path beneath the fuselage. One struck the tail spar. The vibration went through the cockpit. Nadia felt it. She ignored it. Airspeed steady. Altitude steady. Engine steady. They cleared the marsh. Noise from fires below grew faint. Smoke plumes marked destruction. Trees hid the last targets. They banked west. Glide toward the forest. Safety. Minimal exposure. Yelena checked the release board. Empty. All bomblets deployed. Fuse timing confirmed. Explosions followed precisely. Mission objective achieved. She signaled Nadia with a tap. Aircraft leveled. German response began. Rifle fire sporadic. Panic among patrols. Soldiers shouted orders. Trucks were abandoned. Equipment scattered. The supply line crippled. Nadia monitored airspeed. Glide angle calculated. She maintained steady descent. One small error could stall the plane. Po-2 would drop into marsh. Impossible recovery at low altitude. The forest approached. She calculated gap between tree lines. Glide path precise. Rudder adjustments minor. Aileron adjustments calculated. The Po-2 weaved between trees. Wings flexed. Spars groaned. Yelena observed below. Soldiers on the ground searching. Lanterns flicked in darkness. No sighting. No sound except wind. Silent approach remained perfect. They reached the clearing at the far end. Nadia climbed slowly. Engine back to idle. Altimeter showed 35 meters. Terrain safe for level flight. Po-2 remained intact. Smoke from fires below obscured targets. Nadia used it as cover. Night still dark. Stars faint. Moonlight minimal. Perfect concealment. They approached the landing strip. Dirt runway uneven. Frost present. Nadia adjusted brakes. Wings level. Engine idle. Tail steady. Wheels touched lightly. Po-2 rolled forward. Ground crew awaited. They signaled clear. Nadia stopped aircraft. Engine switched off. Silence returned. No sound except wind in reeds. Mechanics rushed to inspect. Tail spar checked. Fabric integrity confirmed. Minor punctures noted. Engine inspection immediate. No damage detected. Ready for next sortie. Nadia climbed out. Boots hit frost-soaked ground. She surveyed area. Fires below. Smoke rising. Supply line destroyed. Mission success recorded. Yelena followed. She carried flare pistol. Checked holster. Checked spring. Checked barrel. Weapon intact. No damage. Ready for next night. Commander approached. Inspected Po-2. Noted bullet holes. Noted damage. No further comment. Nod of acknowledgement only. Nadia and Yelena collected bomblet casings. Logged numbers. Checked weights. Repackaged for next mission. No waste allowed. Precision critical. Smoke from marsh. Reflected moonlight. Fires burned uncontrolled. Supply line devastated. German troops scattered. Confusion remained. Po-2 and crew undetected. Mechanic completed inspection. Wing brace tight. Struts reinforced. Flight ready confirmed. Po-2 could fly again tonight. They walked to the operations tent. Maps reviewed. Damage marked. Reports logged. Targets verified. Calculations adjusted. Next night. Planned. Silence returned. Frost thickened on field. Po-2 rested. Crew rested. Night mission complete. Enemy supply line crippled. The night witches proved effectiveness again. The next day, the frost remained. Po-2 sat on chocks. Nadia inspected the wing brace again. Metal glinted in pale sunlight. Fabric tension correct. Spars intact. Yelena checked the flare pistol. Spring tension measured. Barrel cleared. Ammunition accounted. She placed it back. Silent readiness. The commander entered the field. She circled the aircraft. Not a word spoken. She inspected bullet holes. Traced repaired fabric. Confirmed structural integrity. She left. Mechanics began fueling the Po-2. 35 kilograms loaded. Optimal for low-altitude glides. Fuel flow checked twice. Gauges confirmed. Engine test completed. Stable. Nadia climbed into the cockpit. She checked instruments. Oil pressure. Cylinder temperature. fuel level, altimeter, compass, all within expected range. Yelena followed. She strapped in the rear. She held bomblets in her lap. She checked fuses. Weight confirmed. Pins locked. Release board functional. Ground crew cleared the runway. Frost made surface slippery. Nadia ran checks. Tail wheel rotation. Control surface response. Rudder smooth. Elevators responsive. The M11 engine coughed to life. Throttle advanced. Vibration through fuselage steady. She eased off. Engine running clean. Po-2 rolled forward. Tail lifted. Nose leveled. She held minor adjustments. Aircraft airborne. Glide path calculated. Altitude safe. Moon above thin. Night still dark. Stars dim. Perfect concealment. She cut throttle. Glide began. No engine noise. Fabric wings creaked under lift. Below, German supply trucks moved. No lights. Patrols unaware. Shadows passed over marsh. Timing perfect. She aligned release points. Yelena removed bomblets one by one. Precision critical. She dropped first. Impact followed by low flash. Sparks rose. Fire spread slowly. Second dropped. Third followed. Barrels ignited. Smoke rose. Sparks showered reeds. Huts caught flame. Guards shouted. Rifles fired blindly. Tracers flew. None hit aircraft. Wind accounted for. Airspeed steady. Glide path precise. Po-2 remained intact. She banked slightly. Minor adjustment. Rudder countered. Altitude steady. Smoke below hid them. No detection. Yelena prepared remaining bomblets. She leaned out. Estimated trajectory. Released. Impact successful. Generator hut destroyed. Flames rose. Rifle fire intensified. Sporadic. Soldiers confused. No organized defense. Supply line further disrupted. Nadia monitored instruments. Glide angle optimal. Speed 38 miles per hour. Stall risk minimal. No miscalculations. They cleared marsh. Reeds below barely touched wings. Engine restarted to idle. Altitude 35 meters. Forward path clear. Final inspection of release board. Empty. All bomblets deployed. Timing perfect. Target objectives achieved. Smoke from burning huts reflected moonlight. Marsh shimmered. Enemy patrols scattered. Confusion remained. Night mission success confirmed. Po-2 approached clearing. Glide toward forest. Safe landing path calculated. Frost present. She adjusted. Brake pressure. Wings level. Tail steady. Ground crew signaled clear. Nadia rolled to halt. Engine off. Silence returned. Field quiet. Fires below indicated effective strikes. Mechanics inspected aircraft. Minor punctures noted. Wing brace stable. Struts reinforced. Flight-ready status confirmed. Nadia stepped out. Boots hit frost-soaked ground. Surveyed area. Fires burned. Smoke rose. Supply line disrupted. Mission recorded. Yelena followed. Flare pistol checked. Ammunition confirmed. Ready for next sortie. Commander circled Po-2. Noted repairs. Confirmed airworthiness. Nodded once. Departed without comment. Maps reviewed. Damage marked. Reports logged. Calculations for next night prepared. Team ready. Aircraft rested. Crew arrested. Frost thickened. Night mission complete. Enemy supply line destroyed. Effectiveness proven. Nadia and Yelena sat quietly. No celebration. Only observation. Calculations for next sortie already in mind. Ground crew packed tools. Fuel stored. Ammunition logged. Bomblet casings counted. Precision ensured. Mechanic verified metal braces. Fabric tension confirmed. Spars intact. Flight readiness logged in ledger. Operations officer updated schedule. Next mission target confirmed. Fuel depot. Marsh approach. Heavy guard. High risk. Nadia reviewed map. Target angles memorized. Drop paths calculated. Glide speed and altitude noted. Adjustments pre-planned. The Po-2 stood ready. Night awaited. Engine silent. Wings flexed under cold air. Crew prepared for darkness. Fires from previous night still burned below. Smoke drifted. Shadows moved in confusion. Enemy unprepared. Supply line crippled. The night witches had proven again that small aircraft, precise strikes, and courage under calculated risk could disrupt an entire sector. They left the airfield, frost underfoot, moon faint above. Silence filled the night. Po-2 and crew ready for the next mission. Legacy of precision, risk, and audacity secured.